Well, hello and welcome to the first ever Practical EdTech Creativity Conference. I hope this is the first of many more to come, many more free online events like this, presented by teachers like you and me. Speaking of me, I'm Richard Byrne. Thank you so much for being here. I'm your presenter for the first session, and I'll be dropping into all the other sessions as well throughout the next few days. But I'm going to kick things off today with the presentation, Easy Ways to Make Your Own Apps, or how to make your own apps in your classroom, even if you're not a computer science teacher. Now, before we jump into the presentation, I need to cover a few quick housekeeping things. Number one, there are more than 500 people registered for the presentations over the next few days. So thank you for signing up and for being here, for sharing it with your friends. I truly appreciate it. Some other housekeeping things here. Everything you see on my screen today and everything you see on the screens of presenters later today and tomorrow and the next day, everything is being recorded. So if you miss a session or you have to step away because your dog is barking in the background or your kid spilled a cup of milk, you can step away and don't worry, the recordings will be available. I'll be posting them all on my YouTube channel as well as on practicaledtech.com by the end of the week. And the last thing I want to point out to you is the Q&A function. There's a Q&A function in GoToWebinar, and I encourage you to use it throughout all of the sessions today, tomorrow, and on Thursday. Ask questions. As I wrote in a blog post yesterday, the best way to get the most out of a webinar is to turn off Facebook, turn off the background apps, and chime in with questions or comments. Now, there's a Q&A panel there in GoToWebinar, and just to make sure everyone knows where it is and can use it, let's go ahead and take a look at how it works. Just in the bottom right corner, bottom right for most people, some people may have their computer set up with bottom left, but in the GoToWebinar panel on the bottom right, there is a question and answer field. And if you're here in the live session, just say hello, greetings from wherever you're coming from, wherever you're coming from. Now, I'm the only one who sees it, so everyone else in the group will not see where they're coming from. I see Susan popped in. I got a hello from Pennsylvania. I've got someone from Alberta. Awesome. Winnipeg. Wow, we got a lot of people coming from north of us. North Carolina, Iowa, Illinois, Cambridge, Massachusetts. We're all over the place. This is fantastic. All right. So cool. Thanks for joining in. And anyone else who's signing in, feel free to just say hello, and there it is. All right. So now we have covered all the basics. We've got San Antonio. Hi, Kim from San Antonio. Washington, D.C. Fantastic. All right. So let's jump into the first session, which is easy ways to make your own apps. Or, as I said, how to make your own apps in your classroom, even if you're not a computer science teacher. Now, it just so happens that I am a computer science teacher this year. New role for me. I was asked to teach computer science this year, and so I am. That's kind of how that worked out. I wasn't looking to teach computer science this year, but a great opportunity fell in my lap, and so I took it. And so I'm teaching computer science this year. I have a group of 9th graders, I have a group of 10th graders, and then I have a group that's mixed of 11th and 12th grade students. And we're covering all kinds of things. We're covering everything from network security and computer repair to programming in Python and all kinds of stuff in between. But today we're focusing on apps. So I want to ask a question. If you have ever had an idea for an app, maybe you were watching Shark Tank or Dragon's Den and you got an idea for an app, or you had a student come to you with an idea for an app, go ahead and say yes right there in that Q&A panel. If you've ever had an idea for an app, whether that's your idea or a student's idea, if you've ever had an idea for an app, go ahead and give me a yes in that Q&A panel. Awesome. Got a yes from Brian, Allison, Meg, Ken, Donna. I've got lots of yeses coming through. Great. All right. Now, I want to start with this idea of having an idea for an app. And Jim says, yes, it's why I'm here. Good, I'm glad. So I want to start with this idea of making apps, because this is what I do with my freshmen, my ninth grade students. And one of the things that I've said for years about using technology is that we want to use it to create memorable learning experiences for our students. Things that the experience that they're going to remember even after they may have forgotten the content area. Okay? So something that when I taught social studies, that was always my goal. Create a memorable learning experience that kids can take with them. And if they've forgotten, who was vice president in 1861, so be it. But at least they remembered the experience, right? And hopefully they learn from the experience, and from that experience, they can apply their experience to other situations in life. So I want to start with a little story of one of my freshman students. Now, to protect his identity, we'll just call him Student X. But Student X came to me this year as a ninth grader. He was put in the course by our guidance department. Now, some of you may be in a similar situation. You teach an elective, and sometimes kids are put in there even though they didn't elect to be in there. So that's what happened. And so this student here, I got to catch myself to not slip up with his real name here. But he was added to the course, didn't really want to be there. Kind of made it clear in the first couple of weeks that he didn't really want to be there. And he doesn't really want to be in school as a general rule, but he was put in my course. And I've learned that actually my course is the only one he's passing right now. He gets frustrated by school, gets frustrated by the experience of sometimes having to sit still and not be wiggly and not moving around, like a lot of freshman boys do. Anyway, this fall, we've been using the MIT App Inventor. We started out with another tool called Glide Apps, which we'll talk about today, and then we progressed into the MIT App Inventor. And this week, he had a breakthrough moment where his app finally worked. It finally did what he wants it to do. Now, it's not a very complex app. It's just an app that generates a random image based on a selection. But he had a breakthrough moment of, holy cow, this thing actually works. He had that breakthrough moment, and every class since then, granted it's only been a week, but every class since then, is all he's wanted to do is expand on that app, because now he knows the sequence of events, knows how it works. And like I said, this might be the only thing that he passes all year is my course. He got it. It's priceless. Just that priceless moment of, holy cow, a light bulb went on and he got it. And so my hope is that, with any technology use, that it gives that experience to kids. And it's going to tell them, it's going to give them that opportunity to tell a story, 5 years from now. I was in this class with this guy, Mr. Byrne, and I made this app that generated random pictures and made it look like your phone broke. That's actually what his app does. Makes it look like your phone is broken, your screen is broken. It's kind of clever, kind of cute. So, I always think, what are the stories that my students are going to tell when they're 5 years down the road or 10 years down the road? I live in a small community, so I do tend to run into kids that I had 5 and 10 and 15 and now 17 years ago in a couple of cases. So just keep in mind, what are those students going to tell about you? All right. Now, as we get into making apps, I always refer to the idea that necessity is the mother of invention, and having a problem is what spurs a lot of development of things. You think about some of our most popular apps today. Most popular apps or websites or services you see today. Mark Zuckerberg, Facebook. Why did he make Facebook? Because he was kind of awkward in social situations and wanted a better way to know about the kids on campus with him. Okay? And now look at it. It's a multi-billion-dollar company. Okay? Oh, thank you. Thank you, Susan. That was a nice little comment there. Mark Zuckerberg, he was awkward. That was his real world problem. He wanted to be able to meet girls. So he developed a platform for him. Instagram has made all of us amazing photographers, or thinking we're all photographers, right? Kahoot. Kahoot has been around now for 5 or 6 years, 7 years. It made review activities fun. That's why there's millions of Kahoots out there now. because it made review activities fun in the classroom. Okay, so we're all trying to solve these real world problems. And so one of the things that I've posed to my students is this idea of what kind of problem can you solve? What problem might you solve? Now, it doesn't have to be a complex problem because it's really comes down to the problem that matters to kids. Let them pick out what the problem is. They're going to come up with way more problems than we're going to come up with on our own. In our adult way of thinking, in my 41-year-old mind, my list of problems is way different than the list of problems that my 15-year-olds have. Very different worlds. And so let them come up with those ideas. I'll give you a couple of I'm going to call them classic examples because I've been using them for a few years now. So, you get that app idea. Solve those problems. Of classic app ideas here. So, first of all, this one here came from a student named Ahan Melhutra. We actually follow each other on Twitter. I'll bring him up here on Twitter. So he's a Harvard University student now, Harvard computer science student now. But back when he was in high school, he emailed me with information about his website, Vocabulist. He had built this site. Here he is. There's Ahan. All right. Harvard CS 2021, class 21. He built this site because he was tired of having to look up words in the dictionary or look up words online and create definitions for them, which was an assignment that his AP teacher was giving them over and over again. So what did he do? He coded up this little website where you could upload a list of words and have definitions spit out, and then have those definitions automatically imported into Quizlet flashcards. His real world problem at the time was he was bored copying over definitions. That was his real world problem. Another app created by students, and this one unfortunately is no longer available, but it's called Chau Chak. It was called Chau Checker, developed by middle school students in New Hampshire that would identify allergens in their school lunches, the common allergens in their school lunches. So they could open up the app, look up what the school lunch was for the day, and type in the school lunch for the day, and identify any allergens that might have been in that school lunch. Solves that real world problem again of my mom told me not to eat food that has nuts in it. Oh, it looks like that lunch has nuts in it. I better not eat it today. I'll share one other classic example of an app developed by a student for a problem that he saw. George Burgess, who's now 27 years old, but back when he was in high school, developed this app called Gojimo. Developed the app because he needed a better way to review for geography exams. Wanted a better way to do it, coded up this app, and then eventually it became a bigger and bigger and bigger app to the point that he actually dropped out of Stanford to pursue it, and then he eventually sold it to a publisher in the UK, sold it to the Telegraph for about £5 million. So he didn't do too badly for himself. Again, trying to solve that problem that mattered to him, which was a better way to study for his geography exams. By the way, George is now the founder of a new dating website in the UK. So you can follow him on Twitter if you like. All right. So let's get into making apps here. And one of the things that I am always aware of, and I think we should all be aware of, is Keychain Syndrome. Keychain Syndrome, the idea from Paulo Blickstein at Stanford, that every student makes the exact same thing, and then at the end of the day, they've all got a keychain. Now, he was talking about 3D printing when he used this, but it applies to any kind of project that we do with students, whether that's an app development project, a web development project, or anything else. it's great to do the keychain thing for kids to learn the basics, but if we just all do the same keychain over and over again, we're going to get bored really quickly, and the novelty of it wears off, and it doesn't feel very empowering to kids to be told, okay, you all have to make an app that does X, Y, or Z. So let kids once they've got the basics down, and you do have to get the basics with them. Okay? You are going to teach a lesson where you do the basics. Once they've got the basics down, let them explore. Let them, collaborate, and that collaboration could just be as simple as asking some questions of each other. It doesn't have to be that they all work in groups of 3 or 4 to work on one app. It could just be, you can have them pair off, or become groups of 3 or 4 for a little Q&A. One of the things that I do with my students this fall, with my freshman students, and I have to tell you, I didn't give my students enough protocols before. Next time I do it, I'll give them a little more protocol on how to give constructive feedback. Okay. But I had my students sit down in groups of 4, present their idea to the group, and get feedback from the group. Again, I didn't do enough in terms of setting norms for how to give feedback. I should have done that better because some of the feedback got a little bit less than encouraging, I guess I should say. So, but set up those norms, have that collaboration piece. Now, one of the things that I did and recommend doing is, before your students get into the idea of just, they're going to want to jump right into the editing, right? They're going to want to jump right into, okay, I want to make the app, right? Like, give me the tools, Mr. Byrne, let me go on and make the app. And I've learned over time that whether it's making an app, or it's making a video, or it's making a podcast, or anything else, that, yeah, you can turn them loose on it, but they end up doing a lot of backtracking, and it ends up taking them longer than if they sat down and do some planning in advance. So one of the things that I did this fall, and I'm continuing to do with every project now, every app design project, I should say, is having kids write out, whether it's on paper, it could be big notebook pieces of paper, or it could be in a, on a big poster board type of paper. Have them start with just putting some boxes on a piece of paper. It can be real simple like this. It could be, I'll even show you. I'll do my live drawing right now. Here we go. It can be as simple as this. I'm going to have my little boxes, okay? And this is going to be screen 1 of what they want the app to look like, and screen 2, and what's going to happen here, and so on and so forth. And get them to do that at least on the big picture level for 5 or 6 of their screens, 5 or 6 of their first screens. Get them to do that on the big picture level. And then I'll have them go into Google Slides and create a new slide, a new set of slides that are interactive and hyperlinks. And I see a question there. Just saw a question pop in. Oh, not seeing your drawing. Sorry. There's a very poor drawing on my notebook. It's on my webcam. There it is. Okay. There's a very basic drawing there. But the idea is that once they've sketched out their idea, now we'll go in and use just a basic set of slides, call it the App Design Project. Put this as the home screen. And we'll add in our new slide. Screen 1. Put in their image, their text, their video, whatever it is they want to appear on there. Okay? And they'll write it out for me. And they'll do the same thing again with screen 2. And they'll put in their image, their text, their video. I've had kids put in calendars, whatever it is they want to put on that, whatever is in their vision. And so now they're going to go in and they want to make sure that they're understanding the flow and the sequence here. So they do screen 1 and they hyperlink that screen 1 by doing slides in this presentation. And there it is. And they repeat that again. And we'll go here. Put in screen 2. And really, I'm just using the linking tool that's in Google Slides. You could also do this in PowerPoint. It just happens to be that my school uses Chromebooks for the most part, so Google Slides works for us. Now, depending on the age of your students and their understanding of workflow, you might stop here. In fact, with my freshmen, the first time through, I said, okay, you did this, now we got a problem. What if we want to go from screen 1 back to the home screen? Okay? Or go from screen 2 back to screen 1? How are we going to do that? And a lot of people say, well, you can use the back button. Okay? But do you want to hit the back button twice to go home? No. So what do? Well, they put in home, and they do that linking again. Okay. Now, some students will figure out relatively quickly that they can also hyperlink icons. So rather than putting in the word home, they might do something like this. And one of my students, Connor, actually did this. He was like, hey, Mr. Byrne, could we just use pictures instead of text? I'm like, yeah, you can do that. The whole idea is that they figure out that they need to have all of these options and the workflow between the parts of their apps. So a lot of times what happens is what I've found is that students will get into starting to code up the app or make the app work, and they've left out a key component of how to get from point A to point B within the app. Because they have the vision in their head of how it's going to look and what it's going to do, but they don't necessarily translate it well to others. And that's a big piece of that collaboration. That was what I was going for with the collaboration of having kids sit down in those small groups and talk to each other about what they were envisioning for their app. And again, my protocol was a little bit lacking in that I didn't give my kids enough structure, but you get the idea. Next time around, I'll give them a little bit more structure. So we did those couple of things. We sketched it out on paper. We then mocked it up in Google Slides. And then you go in and you start looking at what tool do we want to use. And this is what most of you are here for today, are the tools. I guess I'm kind of known as the tools guy. So let's talk about tools. The first thing I'm going to do is put a win on your board, if you will. I always like to say, put a win on the board early. We're going to use a service called Glide Apps. Now, you'll find it at glideapps.com. As you can see, I'm already signed in another browser tab here. And glideapps.com is free. There's a pro plan that will give you more features like the ability to add a payment button to your screen and things like that. All things that students don't need. Or I should say, all things that freshman students don't need are available in the paid plans, but the free version does everything a high school student could need and then some. So let me show you what some of mine look like here. I've got places to see in Maine. So here's my places to see in Maine app. I'll give it a moment to load. And we can see right here what it looks like on my screen. You can scan the camera or scan the QR code to look at it. Or if I'm here in the editing for it, when I go to hit share app, I'll have my short URL for it. Places to see in Maine.glideapp.io, or scan the QR code and you've got it. So let's open that app in the web browser. And that's exactly what it looks like. Now, if I wanted to make it an Android version, upper right hand corner, I switch from Android to Apple and back. Now, the way that this was all put together was done right in a spreadsheet. So let's go and open that spreadsheet up. So I called it Places to See, and my spreadsheet is called Places to See in Northern New England. And you'll see I have a sheet down here for Places to See in Maine and a sheet for Places to See in New Hampshire. And I've set my column headers. And as we look at this, my column headers are going to lead to my titles. All right, so place leads to my title there, a big bolded title. My why you should see it is my little description. Great skiing. Now, if I click on it, you'll see I have video highlights. That's a YouTube video of skiing at Sunday River, which I probably shouldn't play if I want to put this video on YouTube later. I'm sure it's copyrighted. Okay. So there's a little video. Okay. And I'll toggle back. And you'll see I have my cover image and I have my video highlights. Now, one of the things to note when adding in my images, when I added in my images here, I have my really simple link to a hosted image online. And that hosted image has to end with a URL that has an image file format, whether that's JPEG or PNG or GIF. It has to have that at the end of it in order for it to properly display here in my app. So let's take a look at how we can make one of these. And because this is done in Google Spreadsheets, this can be done collaboratively. So let's go and make a new Sheets. When you go to Google Sheets, I'll make a new spreadsheet. Now again, you can follow my template here. This is just a simple Places to See, or you could go back and take a look at any of the templates that they offer at glideapps.com. You can use one of their templates and modify it yourself. So let's go and make my new spreadsheet. And let's just say we want to make this a little spreadsheet about review for my US history course. And again, we're just going to kind of follow this model of, well, what do we want this first column to be? Because that's going to be our titles. So maybe I want to call this one era. And maybe I'll call this one here. I'm going to have my era. And maybe I just want to put in some years. Right? Years covered. Right? And maybe in this one, I want to include the image. Okay. So I want to have a little cover image, and I want to have a little video. And I can link into anything I want. Maybe I'll just put in here, additional resources. Okay. So I have my additional resources. Now, let's go ahead and just make this all really bold and easy to distinguish that way. I'll just make sure my headers are really distinguishable there. And you don't have to do that. I only do that just to keep it straight in my own head. So my era. All right. Okay. So I'll put in my years here, 1492, and maybe we'll say up to 1763. Okay. It would say revolution and nation building. And in here, well, let's say 1763 through 1812. Okay. Now, for my images, this is the tricky part. Because again, if you recall, to put in an image, you need to have it hosted online somewhere. And unfortunately, it has to be hosted online and publicly available. So keeping it in a private Google Drive folder wouldn't work, or keeping it in a private Dropbox folder isn't going to work the way that you want it to. So let's find my image online somewhere. Well, maybe I want a picture of Christopher Columbus. So there's Christopher Columbus. I'm going to do my quick search, and I'm sure I'll get a picture from Wikipedia that's in the public domain. And again, I want to try to find stuff that's in the public domain or labeled with the Creative Commons license. So we'll just find our here on Wikipedia, and we'll link to it so that it displays in our app. Okay. So there's my Christopher Columbus image. Now I could also right click on it, and copy my image address that way. Let's go ahead and put that in. There's my image. And maybe I want to do another one. Revolution and nation building. Maybe a nice picture of George Washington would be handy here. So we'll put in our couple of little cover images. Let me copy my image address again and put it in place. Now again, same thing with video. If I want to put my video in there, well, maybe I go to YouTube, and it will work with other video hosting services. If you use Vimeo, it'll work there. If I want to get a YouTube video of Christopher Columbus, maybe I get that link right there. And we'll put our video link in there. Now, for additional resources, I might just do something like, to learn more about this era, please visit the course website at MrBurnTeaches.com. And I can do the same thing with my next section. Right? But for now, let's leave this as is. I'm going to publish my spreadsheet. Okay. Make my spreadsheet available on the web. And now back here in Glide Apps, I'm going to go into my new app. It's going to pull from my Google Spreadsheets account. Now it's important here to note that you must use the same accounts, right? So you need, if you use your school issued Google account to make your Google Sheets, sign in to Glide Apps using your school issued Google account as well. Okay. So there we have our app is built just like that. There's discovery. To learn more, visit the course website. There's our link to our video. If I'm ready to share the app, hit the publish button. And there's our QR code. There's our link to it. We can open it in the web browser, send it via email. You can even send it out via text message or SMS message. Just put in your phone number and send it away. Now, obviously, this one is a little bit basic, right? So I want to go in and change some things around on it. Some of the things I can do. Hit the layout, and I can change the way that it's laid out. We can see there, that's not a great way to lay it out. Checklist. put it back in a list view. It usually defaults to a pretty helpful view. And we can see what we want to have displayed there. Title, we want era and details. Yep. Okay. We can change those out if we want. We can show link screen detail if we want, or not show details. We go to our features. We can show a search bar, or not show a search bar, filter things out. We can even allow users to add items if we want. We can go into our tabs menu, and you'll see that my tab says sheet 1. If I wanted to change it so it doesn't display sheet 1 across the top, go into our sheet and rename it. We'll call it unit 1. And now when I refresh this, it should go from being sheet 1 to being unit 1 across the top. And it may not reload instantly. There we go. Okay. So there we are. Now we have different icons we can use here. To be our little home buttons across the top. You can play around with all those little content pieces we want to display across the top. And finally, in our settings, we have the option to use dark mode, or use it in chat mode, or this other pure black or pure white or light mode, dark mode, whatever you want. Change out your accent colors, make it purple, or whatever you like, or put in your own little icon for the app as well. Put my little description there. Okay. I can say allow anyone to copy my app and sheet as a template. Then my students can modify this as needed. They make their own copies. So it's an easy way to get started making your own little mobile apps called glideapps.com. Now, another service that I've been using for a couple of years, and in full disclosure, none of my students are using it at this current time, but I have used it in the past with other students. Go to gometa.io. Is a tool you can use for creating simple augmented reality apps and games. And you'll find it at gometa.io. We're going to use the Metaverse Studio. And as you can see, I'm already signed into my account. We have a bunch of little tutorials here that you can go through if you like. And I have some different games here. And I'll show you one that I used with the school last year. It's called Sigsbee Amazing Race. Now this is an amazing race augmented reality game. So it's basically an augmented reality scavenger hunt that I made for a group of teachers that I was working with last year. Let me show you what it looks like. The way this is edited together, so we have a series of screens, and each one of these screens represents a screen that would appear on the phone. And if I zoom in on this a little bit, we'll see here to get started, the screen that appears on the phone when players open the app. To get started, search for the queen bee by moving your phone. Make sure your camera's turned on. On your mark, get set, go. And they know they're ready to start when the fish starts to appear. And once they've found it, they get directions from their queen sailfish, principal of the school. Now let me zoom out a little bit. They go here. They'll get their directions. They get directions in the form of a little video. They go here, and then they hit the tap to continue after they got the directions, and they get their first clue. And in their first clue, they're asked zoom back out again. And their first clue here, they're asked to take a picture of their team with the boss man, and everyone must be in the picture. And you can see down here, that triggers their camera to open again, to take a picture, to save to a media gallery that all of us back at the school were able to then view as they were going through the activity. They transitioned all the way through. So let's take a look at how we put one of these together. Let's create a little experience. And we'll get started with this, a real simple search for the missing sock. And I'll zoom in again on this one. In this activity, you must make pairs of socks. Okay. Now, on this home screen, this first home screen, this is what's going to be displayed on the app itself. Well, we have this huge media gallery. I want to put in this sock puppet on the home page. You have to make pairs of socks. And then we go here. What do we want to happen after they see the sock? Well, let's just say tap to get started. And when they do that, they're going to transition to the next scene. We're going to make a new scene. And our next scene is just going to give them a little bit more direction. The sock that is missing is white with the red stripes. When you find it, take a picture to see if it is the missing one. Okay. So now we're going to hit this button again. Let's say tap to take picture. And on this next scene, okay, what do we want them to do? Well, in this case, we're going to make a new scene, and we want them to do something, and we want them to take the picture. And I have to zoom out now to show you this better. So now they need to take the picture. When they get here, they're going to take a picture, and you'll see we have this little marker that says, oh, warning, hold on, your app's incomplete. Now, we want them to take the picture on this scene. They got to take this picture. But we want to know if the scene is going to, if that's the right picture or not. So let's transition to a block. We want a new block of logic. And over here, we're going to use one called Google Vision. And we want to say is object. So you'll see that the explanation here is connect this block to a camera scene to check if an object taken by the user contains a specified object. Let's use that one. Now I haven't connected it yet, so I'm getting that big fat warning. So we're looking for a sock. And we want to go here. We want to make sure that's connected. Transition to block. So now we're matching up. Right. And now we have if object is found, transition to scene. We'll just say new scene. We'll say quickly. You got it. And we can make that more complex if we wanted to, but I want to end this app here. If they get it, we'll say do nothing, or we can say end experience. And now we'll see our app is complete. And so our app really only has 4 screens in it with the little command of is object. If object is found, we're going to transition to the scene. You got it. If it's not, right, well, let's just go back, right, and say go back to scene 3 and loop them around again until they get it right. Now you can go in all kinds of manner with this logic, but it's a very simple way to introduce the idea of how screens are linked together and how commands are linked together as well. Now this is object is really cool because it lets you take a picture and it's going to try to do a search really quickly to find whatever you've specified. You know, is a sock. Now I could say, you know, is a red sock, right? And now when I go to take a picture, it's going to look for a red sock. If it's a red sock, I'm going to say you got it. If it's not a red sock, it's going to loop you back here and try again. Okay. So that's gometa.io. And our last option here is the MIT app. And this is actually what my students have been using, my freshmen using this fall. Some of them took to it very quickly, and others took a little bit longer to get there, including the one I mentioned who just got it last week. So the MIT App Inventor, if you have ever used Scratch or you've had students use Scratch, a lot of it will feel somewhat familiar. And all of my students who had previously used Scratch took to this very quickly. And I'm going to go in and start a new project right now. Or you can see the project I have going on the screen right now. So right now I have a picture of a cow on my screen. And over here in the right-hand side of my blocks editor, that's a piece I don't need. I don't know why I put that in there. This is the controls for my app. All right, so let me go back here to my designer. Let's do a new project. And we'll just call this one Moo. And the idea for this project being that you'll see a picture of a cow, you'll tap it, and it will make a mooing sound. Pretty simple. All right. So we want to add my first screen. Okay. And my screen right now is completely blank, so I want to add an image into it. And for my version here, I don't have any media yet, so I need to put in my picture of a cow. And I'll just go to pixabay.com to get my picture of a cow quickly here. And so let's put in my cow picture as soon as Pixabay loads, we'll get a picture of a cow. There it is. Oh, I typed Pixabay into my Pixabay search. I meant to type in cow. All right, so there's a picture of my cow. A couple pictures of cows. Okay. Let's do my little download of the cow picture. Having a little trouble with that download. There we go. So there's my cow picture. Just put it on my desktop quickly. I want to upload my media file to be displayed. So we're going to upload this cow picture. Pardon my seltzer sip in the middle there. And I just got a server error from the MIT App Inventor. There we go. All right. So there's my screen. Let's rename this screen. I'm getting a little server error right now. Okay. All right. We'll call that home. All right. And so now there's my new home screen in there. Change my background image to cows. Hit OK, and there we are. Okay. Now, I want to add in a button. And it says text for button 1 right there. Well, let's just say tap to hear a moo. And if you're playing along at home or following along at home, you'll notice that you'll guess that the next thing I need to do is now upload some audio of a cow mooing. Now, you can go and get your own, or you can do something really quick and easy, like make your own cow sound, which is what I'll do with Vocaroo.com, and I'll just make my own little moo, and students will hear me moo when the app is completed. So there it is. Moo. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to save that. And let's upload my file. So that I can use that later on when I want to add in my file. So good question, Wendy. Wendy just asked a question, does Vocaroo still use Flash? The version that I just went to, yes, it still uses Flash. However, if you go to beta.vocaroo.com, that's their new HTML version. Works the exact same way. That's the new HTML5 version, I should say. So if you're a Chromebook user, or basically if you're anyone who is going to be affected by the shutdown of Flash, go to, which is all of us, go to beta.vocaroo.com to make your recordings. So now I have that recording there, that media recording, that I'll be able to use when it comes time to add in my sounds on the next phase. Okay. So I can go into my media, okay, and I'm going to add in my sound. So there's my non-visible component of sound, right? Because you don't see sound, you hear sound. So my source is right there, that MP3 file, and hit OK. All right. So now I've set up the basics for my app. Now, if I want to expand this, I can add more components, and I'll also have to go into my blocks editor to set my controls to specify that when the button is tapped, we hear Mr. Byrne go moo. Okay. Now, I have run out of time. I've gotten a little long-winded on this one. I apologize for going a little bit long, but our next presenter is coming up in about 7 minutes. Our next presenter coming up is Jeremy Renkel, and he's going to be talking about 3D printing solutions to world issues. Jeremy's been doing this in his classroom this year. So we're going to be talking about his use of 3D printing with his students and their real world challenges. I've got a little preview of it. It's going to be awesome. And unfortunately, we do have to, yes, Kenneth, you can use App Inventor. So Kenneth just asked a quick question here. So there is not an iOS version of the App Inventor. It only works for designing Android apps. There is a service, Tinker, that will let you make some iOS apps, but it's not as open or as accessible as MIT App Inventor is. And that has a lot to do with the rules around that Apple sets around iOS and publishing to the App Store. So that's where that comes from. All right, so Jeremy's coming up at 4 o'clock, which is in 6 minutes now. I do have to shut down this webinar to start up the next one, which is going to start in 6 minutes. If you missed anything, the recording of this will be available later this week. Feel free to share it with your friends. And if you have any questions for me at all about what I've covered today in my presentation, just send me an email, richard@byrne.media, or reach out to me on Twitter, and I'll be more than happy to answer any and all questions that I can. and provide more tutorials for you as well. I know this went by quickly, and we can go into more depth in some of the more in-depth tutorials that I have on all of these things. So thanks everyone, and I'll see you all again in a few minutes, or maybe a little bit later than that as well. All right, thanks everyone. Jeremy is coming up real soon.